At Subway, start your day the flavorful way by adding new guacamole to your favorite breakfast sandwich. Perfectly made with a hint of jalapeno, our guacamole turns up the flavor to your breakfast. Try it today on a hot and toasty egg white and cheese. Subway, eat fresh.
The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects. The BS Report. The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report, taping this on a Wednesday morning, Southern California time. A little bit later, the masked man, David Shoemaker, coming up. We're going to talk wrestling. We're going to talk about his new wrestling book. But right now, our TV connoisseur. I've abandoned the word critics for Wesley Morris and Andy Greenwald. We're calling them connoisseurs. Our TV connoisseur, Andy Greenwald. How are you?
I'm well. I like that. It makes me sound very classy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, critic sounds like you're just sitting on your couch bitching about stuff. I don't like the word critic.
I do that in my desk. I never sit on a couch when I about stuff, so it's better this way.
Right. You hear critic, you think of like somebody on Fox News about Obama's latest healthcare plan or something, not somebody who's celebrating fantastic TV shows like The Walking Dead, which I know you love. Oh, wait,
I'm a
no,
huge
you don't
fan.
like Walking Dead.
That's right.
I like The Walking Dead. I'm in on The Walking Dead.
I was mercifully removed from the beat a year ago for my own sanity, which I appreciate. But this season is better. I think the season is better. I'm like an episode behind because I can't quite bring myself to do it every week, so I sort of catch up in waves. But I think it's a little bit better than past seasons, mainly because there's been no governor.
Yeah, no governor. They got rid of some of the dead weight. Yes. They have mastered the art of no matter what happens during this episode, we at least have one or two scenes where they randomly encounter some zombies and people's lives are in danger for 90 seconds, which is the key to the show, really. It's almost like when I was growing up, The Incredible Hulk with Bill Bixby. You knew he was going to turn into the Hulk in the middle of the show and at the end of the show. You knew it was coming. You waited for it. And if it always happened, but if it hadn't happened, I would have been upset. And with Walking Dead, it's like, all right, you look at last Sunday, for example, they're trying to get, into the pharmacy or whatever they're trying to do. And they're reaching in the ivy and you're like, oh, the zombies are going to come out of the ivy. This is going to be awesome. And the zombies came out and they know what they're doing now, I feel like.
It's like your colleague, your co-host says, Jalen Rose, there's nothing wrong with giving people what they want. And this is what they want out of the show. I mean, it would be like an episode of CSI Miami in which David Caruso did not take his sunglasses on. Take them off and put them on again. That's why you tune in.
The other thing that's interesting about this show, I forget, I read this link off tvtattle.com and somebody wrote a piece. It wasn't us. It was somebody else wrote a piece about why aren't the stars from The Walking Dead translating into – who wrote that?
I just read it myself, and I'm blanking on who wrote it. But why they aren't becoming bigger stars, right? Why they aren't becoming movie stars? Yeah, and it was
Rick from Walking Dead, who's the star of the show. I don't think most people even know what his real name is. And it's not like it's like, oh, Rick's going to parlay this into X, Y, and Z. And not that always happens. Like Damian Lewis isn't an A-list movie star from, Homeland or anything.
Right.
But at the same time, it's just this nameless, anonymous crew of whatever. It almost reminds me of like a junior version of The Wire, where The Wire had it always felt like 25 good actors at all times, but they never really went on to do anything other than role playing in other shows. But
and now a bunch of them are on Walking Dead.
Yeah, which
you
I
have
appreciate.
Cuddy, you have D'Angelo, but I mean this as no disrespect to some of these actors because some of them are doing good work, some of them are not, but some of them are. But honestly, the way the show is built, you'd be just as well off saying why isn't the Hyundai more of a movie star or why isn't Herschel's crutch getting leading man roles? Because they're essentially props, right? I mean, Some of them are better props than others, but the show is built to just keep recycling, keep rebooting. No one on the show is essential. I guess Daryl has become the fan favorite, and he has just such tremendous hair that it would be a shame to lose it. But at some point, everyone in the cast now could be gone, and the show could still be getting 13 million viewers a week. I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah, which is scary for the actors. You've built a show.
Yeah.
Is this the first show that literally does not depend even 1% on a star?
Other than the Hunger Games, it's basically the same idea. And it's almost perfect because, AMC, made its splash with Mad Men and Breaking Bad, but then they had they had a lot of difficulty with the contract negotiations with those shows because they didn't own either one of those shows. So they had to give a big payday to the studios, and then, there was a question whether Breaking Bad would even move to a different network. Walking Dead is the first show that AMC owns outright, and it's almost like a giant, middle finger to all the other studios, because not only do they own the show and it's the most popular show on television, but they have all the leverage because actors can't be like, I'm the star.
Right. I guess Law and Order, you could say, didn't totally depend on who the stars were, but at the same time it did. It did matter every time they hired somebody. This show, it's like the only person I really feel like they could kill off that people would be furious about is Daryl.
Yep. I think
the only one.
I think people like Glenn. I like Glenn.
Which one's Glenn?
Glenn is, see, exactly. Glenn is he's the Asian American guy who's with Maggie. Yeah.
I got to be honest. I could take or leave Glenn.
Yeah,
I could. I really could.
But how do you feel? How do you feel about like the Grimes family are still essentially, they are the, they're the sun. The show rotates around them to some degree, but I would be perfectly happy if both of them were devoured in the opening teaser of next week's episode. If Carl and Rick were just gone.
I root for it every week.
I know, that's what keeps people tuning in.
I do feel like, I think they need to bring in consultants into the writing room. Here are my two suggestions. I don't feel like they've gotten ambitious enough. Suggestion number one. Okay. There should just be a drop dead beautiful girl in this show. Just drop dead beautiful. Just gorgeous. Like, think about how much everybody loves Mrs. Brody from Homeland. Mm-hmm. And what a tragedy it is that she's been pregnant this whole season and hiding behind pocketbooks and desks and cushions and
kitchen counters.
It's like kitchen counters. It's been a running joke with my wife and I every time we watch the show. Like, Mrs. Brody's getting in the car. She's got some groceries.
Do you see they're actually using Chris Brody as a prop now to block her body? Yeah.
Yeah. It's hysterical. What other props could they use for her? Boxes? Could they be moving? Like maybe moving some stuff around or fixing up the guest room? They could constantly be moving. Okay, the family needs money, so she could get a job as a cigarette girl at an old-timey place and constantly have that tray in front of her. Oh, that's a good idea.
She could find her husband's suicide vest and just hold it up in shock for an entire episode.
What about finding an abandoned baby and then wearing like the Bjorn the whole time?
Yeah. Oh, right. That's also possible. We could keep it in the realm of possibility. I mean, baby, she feels maternal. I like that. Wait, I want to hear
Mrs. Brody. She's got some groceries. She just went to Trader Joe's.
It's ridiculous. Boxes of Franzia wine. She's always got a party going on.
I fully support like giving pregnant people, like all the same rights and all that stuff. But it feels like on TV it's stupid. Well, it's like you're playing a character. This character was not meant to be pregnant. Like you're ruining this character for the year you decided to get pregnant. You couldn't have figured out like, the timing.
Claire Danes, was pregnant and very pregnant for almost all of last season. Right. To the degree when I went on set of Homeland like a year ago, last September, there were so many Carrie Mathesons walking around the set in North Carolina because there was the real one, there was the body double, there was the stand-in, and then there was the belly double. So they would film the scene with her stomach and they would CGI the other person's stomach.
Oh, wow. I mean, but the thing is, like, nobody's watching Homeland hoping that Claire Danes is going to be scantily clad or maybe hooking up with Mike, the bad acting Marine. Yeah. Mrs. Brody being just taken out of the loop completely from a romantic standpoint was a huge blow to this season.
I agree.
She should have been sneaking off to hotels with Mike and stuff like once every 2 episodes. It's a big disappointment.
I think we need a new love interest. I'm okay without Mike. I mean, was anyone excited when he came back the other week? I mean,
he's certainly one of the worst actors in the history of cable drama. I mean, from that point, I was excited. Oh, anyway, I lost my train of thought. So
these Walking Dead. I'm excited about your Walking Dead pitches.
They need a character on the level of a Mrs. Brody. Or who's the lady on Game of Thrones who got into Joffrey's head?
Oh, yeah. Marjorie. You need a Marjorie.
Marjorie. They need somebody who's just smoking hot, sultry, who's working Rick against some other guy. There's like a pseudo love triangle. She's got both of them by the ball of her hands. I didn't use that phrase correctly, but she's just a vixen. And and you're just rooting for her not to die every week. It's almost like in Survivor when they have the really, 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 really attractive female in Survivor, but then the other girls team up and they vote her off about 1/3 of the way through the show. They don't want any part of her in the show.
And it takes away your enjoyment week to week because she's not there to look at.
It knocks it down a notch because it's like, oh, well, obviously she's getting voted off. The other women aren't going to allow her on. On Walking Dead, we have control over this. And this girl should just be on, and it should be like this. Think about who's watching this show. It's mostly guys, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to assume. Is this a mostly male audience for Walking Dead?
I think the other thing you have to factor into it, and we could reach out to Rembert for backup, but the show is set just outside of Atlanta, which is historically a pretty good-looking town.
Yes.
You know, I mean, there are plenty of beauties who, you know, maybe like someone from Little 5 Points who ran a little boutique and she survived somehow and she made it out to I mean, why not? It's possible, right?
You could have sisters. You could have two hot sisters.
You could have what it was like the Coors Light twins could have been in a bunker somewhere. Right, and just emerge.
There's no reason
with the daylight.
With the audience the show has, there's no reason that we can't have a supermodel level actress who's getting chased by the zombies and they ripped off half her shirt and like appeal to your audience, Walking Dead people. So then here's the second one.
Okay.
You know, you're in Atlanta. They have 4 professional sports teams.
Mm-hmm.
They have the Falcons. They have the Hawks. They have the Braves. Why wouldn't one of the Hawks be running from the zombies? Why not have like a 6'4" professional basketball player? Rick Fox. Rick Fox is available. But somebody along those lines, and it's like, hey man, where do I know you? Like they run into new people in the house, and it's like kind of like what happened last week, where you're like, oh, these 2 people in the house. Hey, should we let them into our gang or not? But then in this case, it's like, hey man, where do I know you? I swear you look so familiar. It's driving me crazy. Oh, I'm on the Atlanta Hawks. I'm their starting 2 guard. And now I'm running away from the zombies. Oh, we can trust this guy. He's on the Hawks. I've watched him play. But no, he turns out to be a bad guy. That's the thing. He sucks them in with his fame. But no, he's a bad guy. He's up to bad stuff. He's stealing medicine.
Because he's used to being pampered. He's used to a certain lifestyle and getting what he wants.
Yeah, he's used to ordering people around. He's used to having people waiting on him hand and foot. And now he doesn't want to be told what to do by Rick. He just got 2 coaches fired.
I don't know a lot about the logistics of a zombie attack, but I have to think that Jason Hayward would survive it somehow. You know,
there you go.
Look at
Jason Hayward. How about just having Jason Hayward?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. He is. He's like he's a physical specimen, you know, and by all accounts a pretty decent guy. So why doesn't he just hold on to his Louisville Slugger? You know, he has 50 in his house, and he just bats. He has a very high OPS as he escapes the city. His slugging percentage on the way out is unparalleled.
I wish we had the technology to call Rembert right now and get his top 3 Atlanta suggestions. What about one of the Real Housewives of Atlanta? Who wouldn't want to see them getting eaten up? I don't think they use the Atlanta thing well enough.
What about Young Jeezy? Like, I feel like the whole Atlanta world, they really need to embrace it because they film in Georgia. It's not like one of these shows that is filming in a place that isn't the place. Right. You know, like Homeland is set in D.C. It films in North Carolina. This is filmed in Georgia. So there is no excuse.
You know who else is in Atlanta? Charles Barkley. Why couldn't he be on a show? Oh my God, Charles Barkley's trying to escape the zombie apocalypse.
First of all, as if it would hurt the ratings to do a stunt episode where Charles Barkley wanders in and is ripped apart by the end of the episode. I mean, that would be the highest rated episode in the show's history.
It really bugs me, and I think the show is too grim, and they've just. I don't think they have enough fun with the show. I still watch it every week. I really enjoy it, but I think they could do a couple fun things for it. And, like the fact that they haven't done a love triangle type thing yet, and maybe everybody just smells so bad at this point, nobody wants to have sex. But, you know, I don't know. They could, for next season, I think they should invite some out of the box people in the writer's room to have them throw some ideas around.
Well, here's a question for you. You've read that AMC is launching a Walking Dead spinoff because it's the most popular show on television.
I wanted to bring this up with you. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. You ask your question first. Sorry.
Oh, so I just was curious because in my mailbag last week, I suggested 2 versions of the spinoff that I thought would be good. One was in, you know, you set it right at the beginning of the plague, so we actually get a little bit more knowledge about it. And maybe it's set at like a military hospital outside of DC with a group of people who know each other in advance and have some skills. And then we see their world basically collapse. Or And my other idea was it's an anthology series. So every week is different. You know, there's one episode set in like a Detroit prison where there's the one cop left guarding the criminals. And then there's one episode set, you know, maybe a teenager decides that day is the day he's going to run away and the world falls hard around him. One set in Antarctica at like a research installation. So we just see the whole world, and it actually has, you know, it's not just these people stuck in a prison. But I was curious where you would go with it.
Well, wouldn't the obvious idea, there's a few obvious ideas, but wouldn't one of them be like kind of like a Lost type angle on it, trapped in the apocalypse, going out in flashbacks to learn more about him?
I think that this is the show. Walking Dead is The Walking Dead. They're not changing it because it's working. But I like to know a little bit more about the world, and I like to have a little bit of a sense of potential hope. I mean, this whole show is basically about these people circling the drain. There is no hope for them, and they'll just keep dying, and a few more survivors will be there. But I would rather see what you're saying. I would rather see characters we care about and have a sense of a larger world.
This is a very important question. Actually, the reason I had you on was because I wanted to talk about NBC and just how awful they are. And,
I'm excited. That's my number one topic.
Well, Chris Ryan, I took Chris Ryan to the Clipper game on Monday, and I was telling him the idea I'm about to talk to you about, and he said you guys had talked about it on a podcast a little bit, so I thought we'd talk about it here. I don't listen to any podcasts. I don't even listen to my own podcast, so don't take it personally.
Not at all.
I can't listen to podcasts and do other things, and I don't have time to just listen to a podcast. So if the people who work for Grantland, they can do all their work while also listening to podcasts. I'm very envious of this, but my generation can't do things like that, or at least
I can't do it. I can only listen to them when I'm like riding the subway or commuting. But since I'm in New York, I don't drive around. I never have time to listen to them because I'm otherwise sitting here writing, and it's too distracting.
All right. So my complaints about NBC, NBC should just be ashamed. Like that guy should just resign. Greenblatt.
Yeah,
just hang it up. Just resign.
He got extended. Can you believe this? They extended his deal. Their post Sunday Night Football ratings are going to break all kinds of network records. Yeah. It's like it's impossible to be this bad, and they're this bad. But first of all, if I'm running, who owns NBC Universal? It's right? Comcast. Comcast owns NBC Universal.
So I'm the head of Comcast. I bring Greenblatt in. I ask him to lunch. I bring him in. I say, hey, so yeah, I was looking at those Walking Dead ratings. Not exactly a new thing, right? This is year 3 for this show. Where the was our zombie spinoff show or a zombie ripoff show? How do we not have a zombie show? Wait, what the were you doing the last 12 months? Where were you?
Yeah.
What were you watching? Do you look at ratings? How do we not have a zombie show? That would be my first question.
That's a good question. That is a strong lead. I think that would get his attention.
I would love to know the answer to that. Well, we just felt like the show. Bullshit. The show's getting 13 million people per thing. People like zombies. They don't. There's plenty of room.
Outrating. It is the only reason NBC is even considered a network. Like the only reason it is even in the conversation for that we still talk about it is because of Sunday Night Football. And The Walking Dead in the key demographic is outrating Sunday Night Football, which is outrageous. Right. And people have said about NBC last year and this year in the fall, they'd be like, oh, NBC is a little bit back because, you know, it's doing well in the demo. It's number 1 a couple weeks, not in total viewers, but in that 18 to 49-year-old. But this happened last year. Once football goes away, and The Voice goes away, it craters. It craters beyond all compare because there's no there. And what's shocking that the guy got extended is because he's had 3 years of just throwing stuff at the wall, of clearly showing very, very little taste. To be honest, because it's not like the shows he's put on the air and that have failed have been good. They've all been relatively terrible. And so instead of chasing the audience that exists, like people who really want to watch shows like The Walking Dead, he is desperately trying to turn the clock back to 1993, you know, and hiring Michael J. Fox and Sean Hayes and doing these very old-fashioned sitcoms, while at the same time burying the sitcoms that NBC has done okay with, like shows like 30 Rock or Parks and Rec. So there's no there. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. And I don't know why. I mean, I always say that NBC is lucky that a lot of us who grew up in the 80s and their great shows in the 90s, we have this weird personal fondness and sentimentality for the network. Maybe it's because of Saturday Night Live or 30 Rock, but I still care about it for some reason, even though it's just been lousy for a decade.
And as we've talked about on this podcast a million times, if you're going to run back the retro and try to tap into that, you don't do it with the stars. You do it with the ideas. Like you just redo Cheers and you put it in Chicago and you come up with a different cast, and all you do is you pay one dude. And we always said on the pod it would be Vince Vaughn. And you make him a former Blackhawks right wing who's battling alcohol problems, and now he's sober and he owns his bar in Chicago. Like, that's the kind of retro stuff people are like, whoa, they remade Cheers? Oh, we just watched that first one. I think you run back ER.
You have to run back ER. And that's what I said in my column. I said, every network has the show that people associate with it, right? And ABC, it's like Grey's Anatomy is just still there. People still watch it. CBS, it's these, CSI, NCIS shows. NBC had their version of that. It was called Law and Order. It always worked. It always was on, and people love watching it again and again. So why do you only have one version of it that's kind of tired, that only is about sex crimes? My suggestion in my column the other week was you reboot Law and Order, and you you give it a cast of like 20 people. You fold SVU into Law and Order Prime. And so now the show is on once a week, and you can follow different cases. You can have one cast doing one case for like 3 weeks. You could have one and done with one group of the cast. And if you do that, you can hire like really big New York actors who are just hanging around and don't mind doing it. I mean, you could probably get why couldn't you get Kevin Kline or something to be the DA? I mean, you could just pay him and he would show up for work for 15 minutes, then be able to go back uptown or see a show at Lincoln Center. Use something that you have and that people already associate with your network to just bring the audience back, to bring the fondness back. And yet it's just dying on the vine, and, they reboot stuff that nobody cares about.
I would bring back LA Law.
LA Law would be great.
Why not?
The Good Wife, which I know you watch more than I do, but that show has proven there's an audience for that sort of, kind of smart, sexy, flashy stuff. What's wrong with LA Law? The firm exists. You have Blair Underwood under contract still from Ironside. Build the show around him.
Well, Ironside is an example of something I wouldn't have done.
No.
I think retro can go, you can't go where it's only retro to people who are 55 and over. You know what I mean?
What was the pitch meeting for that? It's like, guys, I'm going to blow your mind. It's a show that went off the air in 1975 about a police detective in a wheelchair, but bear with me. Like, what is the conversation? How do you get
now the guy
attention?
Is black and handsome, and this is going to work.
And he wears a nice beanie. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And no one is surprised when it fails after 2 weeks.
So Chris Ryan and I was talking, and he said you guys had talked about this, but we're running it back. I think the future of TV or future network TV, and they're just not, I don't know who's going to embrace it first, but whoever does is going to be hailed as a genius and a savior. It's the guy who just says, I don't care if we have 7 seasons of this show. I'm fine if this is 9 episodes and that's it. I'm fine if this is 14 episodes and that's it. It's basically the miniseries idea of, like, when we were growing up, Rich Man, Poor Man was like the biggest thing ever, and Roots was the biggest thing ever. And then that miniseries eventually actually went through to like the early 80s. I remember like Richard Chamberlain was in one. What was that? The Thornbirds?
The Thornbirds, yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of died in the late 80s, but I would, instead of filming 100 different pilots and then coming out with 5 and 4 of them are I would rather spend that money and try to say, like, all right, what one season shows can we make? What if we just made a steady stream of awesome 1 season shows? And the other thing about that, and we know this just from our 30 for 30 experience, like, that's how you can get a really good director or a really good showrunner, creator, because these people don't want to devote 7 years of their lives to a show. What happens is they do it for a year and then they turn it over to somebody else.
That's why Kevin Spacey and David Fincher did House of Cards, because it was 24 episodes, and they knew that that's what it was going to be. And I think miniseries are the sort of the next market inefficiency. I mean, that's what John Landgraf, the head of FX, told me, and that's what he's getting into that. And he's getting, it's working because he's doing a Fargo show with the Coen brothers as a miniseries. He's working with like filmmakers like Alexander Payne and people, because they don't want to commit, but they want to tell the stories. And I think in general, the pilot process is just fundamentally broken, meaning, where every year they pay for, 50 scripts, and of those they make 25 pilots, and then they pick 10 shows and 9 of them get canceled. I mean, it doesn't work. But especially now when every show that people really care about is essentially a limited series. I mean, Breaking Bad was, 50 some episodes, but it was a limited series. It makes so much more sense for people just to go all in. I was saying they should bring back the miniseries. They should just, I suggested that NBC should buy this book, The Passage, which is this awesome, scary, it's like Stephen King's The Stand, but the virus turns people into vampires.
Yep.
Buy that. And then, make it just a maxi series, like 15 episodes, get big talent involved, run it from January to June, and who wouldn't watch it? People are used to doing that now. They understand tuning in for an event, and I think it would get people excited.
Well, here's the funny thing. CBS just did it with that Under the Dome, and it worked, and it got huge ratings, and nobody came away from it and said, "Oh, maybe that's the future of TV." Which I don't get at all. I don't understand how you walk away from that and you don't make the connect X, Y, and Z there.
I mean, there's some of it, like the Following on Fox, which I don't like, but that's a limited. They do 15 episodes of that, and Sleepy Hollow, which is doing really well and is pretty good. I think they're only doing 10 or 12 of them. So networks know that they're not, the model is moving away from 22 episodes and just hope that we get there. But they're not thinking as ambitiously. I mean, they never do, but they're not thinking as ambitiously as you're describing. I don't think.
I think you could tap into, one of the things I would do is buy the rights to different movies and blow them out into like 14 or 15 episode things or twist the premise around. Like, you could take a movie like 28 Days.
Yep.
And you could blow that out into an awesome 12 episode show.
The Sandra Bullock rom-com? Or 28
Days Later, I'm sorry.
I want to combine those two.
Yeah, that would be interesting. 28 Days and 28 Days Later in one bigger show. But yeah, 28 Days Later would be, that's a 12 episode awesome show that I would watch. I think The Breakfast Club was on Sunday morning, which is now like hilariously dated.
Yes.
But I was thinking like, that would be a really cool show if somebody blew out the modern version of that. And the first like 5 episodes were them in detention. And then all the beats happen where, the jock falls in love with the Ali Sheedy character who's disgusting, but now it's like had this makeover. And then Bender falls in love with Molly Ringwald, whatever. But now we go into high school with them on that Monday and just everything falls apart. And then it's another 8 episodes and it's over in 13 episodes. I would watch all of those.
I think one of the ways we would get good shows back and shows that would sort of go against the blockbusterization. This is something I wrote about in my column that went up today. Is one of the ways we'd get away from that and get back to shows about people would be limiting them. Because right now, when you go to pitch a TV show to a network, they're like, okay, well, what's the pilot? But then they're like, what's the first season? What's the 5th season? What's the 7th season? And if it doesn't have the hook, like, well, they're cops, so there's always going to be a new case, or there's a murder every year, then they can't imagine the 3rd season. If you just say, well, it's about people and some of them are in high school, then immediately their thought goes to the 3rd season of the 3rd season of the OC or something, when it starts to, the cracks start to show. So as soon as you say, well, we're only going to make 20 of these and we know the full story, then I don't see why people wouldn't give it a shot, especially if it's like The Breakfast Club. That is not going to be an expensive show to make. I mean, that's like one set for the first 5 hours.
You just brought up an awesome example. Imagine the OC if they had told Josh Schwartz, you're doing 13 episodes a year and we're doing 2 years and that's it. And the end game is them graduating from high school and that's it. Don't get any more ambitious than that. Outsider from whatever goes into this town, tell us 26 stories and you're done. That's a totally different show. And it's probably actually a legendary show.
Yeah. And he's weeping right now somewhere thinking about this because, he had great cast, great characters, great writing. And then, because it hit as sort of a quasi phenomenon, Fox made him make something like 27 hours the first year.
And they killed it. And they killed like 3 characters. Yeah, he used all his stories. He shot all his bullets. He
had never done it before, so he was like, well, I'll just keep using story. And as a fan, we appreciated that. But then what was left for the 2nd season and the 3rd season? And it's just not a normal way to think about telling a story.
And I think what happened with Breaking Bad really helped, like this mindset too, where, what was this last season? 8 episodes?
Yeah, the last 2 seasons were 8 episodes.
Yeah, I mean, somewhere between 8 and 10, I think in my head would be ideal. But if I just knew, like, all right, for these next 10 Sunday nights at 9 o'clock, this show's going to be awesome. And I don't care if it's on NBC, ABC, HBO, FX, or whatever. I know it's at a certain level of quality. I think Chris said you guys talked about Hannibal. Hannibal's a great example of everything we're talking about. I don't want to watch Hannibal for 3 years. If you told me there was a finish line and that this creepy guy I only have to deal with for 9 weeks, now I want to watch that show, but I don't want to watch a show that never ends with this creepy serial killer.
You just also have to they have to consider how people are watching these shows. And, they've tried to avoid serialization, even though that's what people like, when the story continues week to week. But also so many people like to catch up. And if you tell someone, yeah, this show's really good and, you have the summer to catch up, but hope you have, 26 hours blacked out to watch it before you can even catch up to the next 22. That's just much more daunting than being like, yeah, there's 8 episodes, and you'll have a great weekend. If it's, there's a snowstorm, turn it on and you can watch it. And then people are all caught up and they want to talk about it and increases enthusiasm and people are ready to go. And I think that they're really struggling with that because their whole economic model is based on just on maximizing everything.
I think Studio 60 is another example of a show that could have benefited from being 10 episodes instead of 20 or whatever it ended up being before it was canceled. Newsroom is what is that, 10 episodes?
This year was 9 because
9,
Sorkin
but it felt
wanted
like
to refilm
50.
one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think Sorkin can do like a really strong 55 minutes. Like just give him 1 hour to really just tell his story and then let him go back to movies.
Sorkin's the first guy ever who needs commercials. He's the first TV showrunner ever who actually the commercials help him in some way because it gives you a break.
Just one guy talking at you in that same rhythm for an hour is a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. Last thing, Homeland.
Yeah.
We made you stop doing recaps of these. I take full responsibility.
Thank you.
I wanted to prevent what happened with Walking Dead, where you were just stuck recapping a show every week that none of us believed in anymore. I think it was the right call. And the thing is about, you can always come back, and you wrote about it a little this week, but you can always come back and write the 3,500 word, here's what happened the last 4 episodes, and here's what I think Homeland piece. My friend Jen from college, who I've been friends with for 25 years, furious that you stopped doing the Homeland recaps. Probably the biggest fight we've had in 10 years.
Oh, I'm so sorry for the strife. Gosh, well, that's nice of her.
Well, she loved your Homeland recaps, and she's like, what am I supposed to think now that Andy Greenwald isn't telling me what to think? And I'm like, here, I'll tell you what to think. It's a crap show. There's your thought.
I mean, I only protested a little bit because I kind of like having the season-long conversation with something, because sometimes watching something unravel is as interesting as when it's taking off. But it's
a waste of your time, and it's a waste of your talents, and you're better off writing about different stuff than just the show that started to suck.
I appreciated the last few weeks, 3 weeks, where I could just jump in on a few other things that we hadn't talked about, and then come back, and it's kind of a mess, it's a mess, and it's really fascinating to watch, because I don't know if I can remember a show. I'm sure there are many examples of it, but off the top of my head, of a show just so fundamentally misunderstanding what people like about it and what people want out of it as this show. I understand why, because they won an Emmy and people were taking it so seriously, why the people behind the scenes felt the need to sort of tie up every loose end and really address the moral implications of the bombing and really wonder where Brody is and all this stuff. But it's exhausting. Nobody cares, because as soon as you start asking those questions, then we have to deal with well, wait, why did any of these people still have jobs after what they've just let happen? No one would have been upset, right, if the show had just moved on 6 months later, Saul's in charge of the FBI, there's a new mission, and he and Carrie are out to get the bad guys. Who wouldn't watch that show because we like these people? But instead, we're just moving backwards.
It's a little bit reminds me, well, 2 things on this. One, Homeland is the greatest example of all time of a show that should have been 1 season.
What a great season. Yeah.
Brody blows everyone up in the end of the season 1, and it's over, and we just talk about, oh my God, that was incredible. Really? That's their walk-off homer? Oh my God.
Yeah.
And we're fired up about it, and it's too bad. You can't blame them for trying to keep the gravy train going, but it would have been the greatest way to leave. It's forgotten the fundamental rule of television, which is I'm supposed to be entertained. Don't be afraid to entertain me during the 55 minutes I'm watching your show.
And it's long. It fills the whole hour too.
Feels 55. When it's a great show, you look at the clock and you go, oh, there's only 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
With this show, you look at the clock and you go, oh my God, there's 25 minutes left.
Yeah, and Dana and her boyfriend are just driving, just leaving the mental hospital at that point, and you're like, oh God, how much more of this is there? I mean,
I've swung the other way in the Dana plot. I feel like
more?
it's like one of the legendary bad plots ever now. It's up there with Nikki and Paulo and Jack Bauer's daughter getting chased by the cheetah.
The cougar, yeah.
And the Brady bunch being trapped in the caves in Hawaii with Vincent Price.
Or Landry on Friday Night Lights as a murderer.
Landry, this would be a fun column for us. We should just do like a giant shoot around of our favorite horrible TV plots. Because it's got to be in the short discussion of the short list of the worst ever. I don't know one person who's sitting there going, I'd love to see a little more Dana this week.
Well, the people in the writer's room were sitting there doing that. I mean, they were really committed to it. And,
I thought it was done. And then this episode, she's like, Mom, I'm going to change my name. Oh, and here's this friend none of us have ever met who's never been on the show before. I'm going to move in with her.
Who seems super interesting. I would be into her coming onto the cast. I mean, they don't have many people on the show at the moment. Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the year, I was one of the few people saying, I don't dislike the actress or the character. Like, it would make sense that there would be some emotional fallout from discovering your dad is the world's most wanted terrorist.
Yeah.
But this, the doomed love affair and the pouty, the teenage stuff. It's a show that seems insistent on giving us medicine when it was never that sort of show. The show should be a thought-provoking, insane spy drama with great actors, and it was that. And now I honestly don't know what it is, which is a problem when you're in your third season.
Well, they better make it up to us next year when a no longer pregnant Mrs. Brody has a torrid affair with the President of the United States, because that's the only way they salvage this. Yeah,
full scandal, and it got renewed.
Just rip off.
It got renewed, so it's going to happen one way or another.
Scandal's been very disappointing this year. And I don't know if it's whether it's disappointing because if you don't binge watch them and you just watch them for 1 hour, they're not very good. They're almost better if you're watching 3 in the same night and you're not totally watching them and you're just binge watching them, and then it's fine.
I think that might be the case.
It's an over the top ridiculous season.
That's the show you need to keep for yourself. Just keep it for the summer, enjoy it when you can, and don't. I think when it becomes appointment viewing, you might be in trouble.
I'm worried when Walking Dead goes away. I'm going to have a show that.
No, it's lonely. It's going to be a long winter. It's going to be a long winter.
I certainly wouldn't want to be the TV connoisseur for Grantland during a long winter.
Tell me about it. But we'll just generate some stuff. We'll write about bad TV shows and bad plots, and we'll just keep bagging on NBC, because that's the gift that keeps giving when you do my job.
Well, and to be fair, we should do a little bagging on ABC too. Like, I don't know how you mess up that Marvel show. Yep. How do you mess up a Marvel show?
I bagged on it. Yeah. I mean,
you took a shot at it this week. I supported it.
Yep.
That should be a cool show. Like, that should be a show like my son should watch.
Yeah. And it's just boring. It's like watching corporate earnings report print out. It's just there's nothing there yet. But
my theory at network TV, and then I'm going to let you go, is this: too many people in the room.
Totally. Oh, especially that show.
I've said this to you before. Just too many people in the room. Just turn it over to one person and execute their vision.
And trust them to do it. Yeah.
All right.
I agree.
Andy Greenwald, our connoisseur of the tube. We'll talk to you soon. Listen to his podcast with Chris Ryan. We call it Crandyland. They both hate that title, so it's the Chris and Andy show. And read Andy on Grantland. He did Mailbag this week. He wrote a really good column about the zombification of TV, not what you think, this week. And we will talk to you soon on the BS Report. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, we're going to call the masked man David Shoemaker. But before we do that, a word from our friends at Subway.
Get to Subway to play the Hunger Games Catching Fire. Find game codes on specially marked bags of chips and 30-ounce collectible cups for your chance to win thousands of exclusive prizes and experiences, like a trip for 4 to Hawaii. And catch the Hunger Games Catching Fire in theaters November 22nd. Subway, where victors eat.
All right, as promised, our wrestling dude, David Shoemaker, he wrote a book. It's called The Squared Circle. It came out late last week. It's available. It's basically a history of wrestling, but it's told through the lives of different wrestlers who are not alive. but very effective. Because here's the thing about wrestling. Just about everybody dies for the most part. I especially like the Andre the Giant chapter because that's like our dream 30 for 30. I couldn't be more fascinated by Andre the Giant. I don't think the 30 for 30 will ever happen because the WWE guards their footage and their dudes. It's just in a vault and sadly won't happen. So at least we have this chapter. Congrats on the book. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm really excited.
So as I've told you, I've been all in on wrestling these last 4 months because my little man got into wrestling and it's insane. And he just had a birthday party and now I think he has every wrestling figure that's ever existed. The John Cena thing, which doesn't make sense to adults. When you see it through the lens of your kid, it makes sense. My kid loves John Cena. He loves him. He's like a superhero for him. And now John Cena makes sense to me. But does John Cena make sense to you?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's always been a part of it. It's you always get the feeling that he's to appeal to someone besides you. But it's great to know for WWE's sake that he is a superhero for people like your son. I mean, that's the audience that they need because those are the people who are gonna make their parents buy shirts and tickets and everything.
Yeah, that's true. They're the receptacles. And I always, I would come in and out of wrestling the last decade, ever since Cena kind of came in. He was in like, I think 01, 02 in that range.
Yeah.
And it always, once he became polarizing, the question was always, oh, when are they going to turn him?
Uh-huh.
But really they can't because like if they turn John Cena, I think my son, his whole life would fall apart.
Yeah, it would be really tragic for people like your son. And then the other problem is like people like me would start cheering him the second that he turned, right? I mean, there's no way he can turn. There's no way he can be more of a heel than he is now.
Well, you've written about this a lot for Grantland. The biggest difference with wrestling in 2013 versus what we grew up with is people don't have to be one side or the other anymore. They do a nice job of kind of making it murky and kind of letting the crowd decide what the reaction should be. And sometimes polarizing is like the best possible thing. When we were growing up, you had to either be a good guy or a heel. And it always got super awkward when people didn't really like the good guy anymore, but the WWF was refusing to admit that. And you always had this delicious like 6-7 month range where the crowd was just done with the good guy, but they couldn't figure out what to do with him. And now that it seems like they don't care as much. It's more about the story than what the positioning and the characters are. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's totally true. I mean, part of it when we were growing up is that it sometimes, you said it took 6 or 7 months to turn somebody. Like sometimes it took 6 or 7 months to get new storylines onto TV because they were recording so far in advance and things move so slowly. Now it's just as this insane tempo. But yeah, I mean, I write in my book about how the coolest thing about wrestling is like that different than any other sport. It's like the crowd interaction is just so central to it. And back when we were coming up, a good guy was only a good guy if he was getting cheered. Well, at first, and then they would turn him because of the reaction. Now it's just so weird that like I don't even know. It's hard to even like understand if crowd reaction has a direct relationship to how they're positioning guys anymore. But yeah, I mean, guys can just sort of be tweeners, and they can kind of float out there somewhere in the middle, which in its way is a lot more realistic. But I guess I guess that's a good thing, right? Yeah,
it's Lex Luger was somebody I always thought when he was in the then WWF and Hogan. I forget if he left or if he was making movies or he was gone, and they tried to position Lex Luger as the Hogan. And it was just like, we're doing this. This guy's a good guy, and we're making this happen. It was the first time I remember the crowd really, really rejecting that. Just being like, nah, you picked the wrong guy. We don't like this guy. It's not happening for us. And then that was the last pre-internet time that happened. Cause then mid-90s, I think they had a much, with the message boards and the bloggers and stuff, they probably at least had a little bit of a feel for how people felt. But in that era, it was just basically the reactions of the crowd, and that was it. And it was Lex Luger. There's positioning him as the American hero, and the crowd's booing him, and it just was fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, they took this guy he was the narcissist in the WWF right before that, and then when they needed him to be a good guy, they put him in like Rocky Balboa briefs and like lowered him down onto an aircraft carrier, and he body slammed Yokozuna, and as if that was going to make all the difference in the world, but nobody really cared. And if that wasn't clear enough, then it was clear when WWF and WCW started kind of passing him back and forth like a baseball card nobody wanted.
Right.
But they kept on treating him, and every time he popped, like as if he was a big deal. But anyway, yeah, I mean, you can't get away with that anymore. I mean, when you and I talked to Triple H, he was like talking about how cool it was that they have a test audience every single night in the arena. But they have to pay attention to the reactions people are getting online too. It's just you can't keep a secret. I mean, you can't keep that under wraps like that.
Well, they've had two guys in the last 2 years that took off probably in ways that they didn't totally expect. One was CM Punk.
Right.
And then the Daniel Bryan thing, I mean, I'm sure they're trying to claim behind the scenes now that they knew at least some of this was going to happen, but I can't imagine they thought this guy was going to become the most beloved good guy that they've had in a long time. I can't remember anybody who has a higher approval rating than Daniel Bryan. Can you?
No, I mean just
era.
kind of the insanity when he is when he wins a match or whatever and is doing the yes chant is like something that, I mean, the crowd has not been that united in excitement since I don't know when, since Stone Cold Steve Austin or something like that. There's no way. I mean, they obviously set the table for it to happen. They knew this was going on. They just plopped him right in the SummerSlam main event, and but I don't think they could have predicted the excitement to the degree that it happened. Now, the ratings for SummerSlam were actually down a little bit, and Vince McMahon was on his investors call the other day, kind of like quietly blamed it on the main event, and it seemed like he was sort of talking about Daniel Bryan being there. So we'll see how long. We'll see where this goes. I mean, now it seems like he and CM Punk are doing a thing with the Wyatt family. So we'll see how Big Show in the championship match actually, if he does any better. I kind of doubt it.
Well, as somebody now who's in this full scale and has to order all the pay-per-views and all that stuff, first of all, there are too many pay-per-views.
Oh, yeah.
It's like they snuck that one in there of a couple, like 2 pay-per-views ago. And I still don't even know what the reason was. It was a terrible pay-per-view. I mean, people knew it was going to be bad, but it was especially bad. And then had the really confusing ending that you wrote about, or my son went to bed thinking the Big Show was the champion. I had to keep telling him he wasn't. Or maybe was that the last one or the second to last one?
That was the second to last one.
Yeah, that's the same one. But,
yeah, it was super weird, and wrestling is one of the great things about it is that it's simple, right? I mean, like you have, if you don't watch for 10 years, you can turn it on and you understand what's going on to a large extent. Yeah. There's nothing worse than a wrestling match that ends with like fans having to check recaps to figure out what happened. Right. I mean, it's a total mess. And yeah, the schedule that they're on now is they know it's broken. They already released their schedule for next year, and they're still doing 12 pay-per-views. But they redid the schedule, so there's not one of these 3 pay-per-views in 6 week situations. That's just insane.
They should do 11 pay-per-views. I think they're a little greedy. There's ways to space it out so that it feels a little more special when the next one's coming. And,
yeah. Well, it's not. I mean, they're in hock to the cable companies. I mean, it's not like if the cable companies get 50% off the top of all the money they make, and that's why they're so expensive. And if they eliminated one, that's a bunch of money that people aren't making. So, they kind of, once you start doing it, it's hard to stop. But I think they're actually going to do this WWE Network thing in the not too distant future, which will probably end up having, all but the big 4 pay-per-views just on there for free. I mean, you have to pay, you'll have to subscribe, but they'll be on there. So maybe they can mess around with the schedule some when that happens.
Oh, that's interesting because I remember I told this idea to you once. I thought I should be able to get a league pass type thing where you have in the NBA where you get every game.
Yeah.
Where you just pay up front for all the pay-per-views. So if they're all like, what are they, like 12 times 55, it's like $700. Mm-hmm. Just up front, tell me I can get all of them for $350 and you have my money right away.
Yeah.
And then I don't have to order them every time. So that would work,
I think that's where they're headed. It's going to be, it'll probably be $15 a month or something like that. And you get all that, you get most of the stuff for free, once you pay that for free. The hard thing comparing it to the NFL Network, though, is that they'll have to have an artificial deadline, because like everybody gets the NFL Network because it's like, you're like, holy crap, football starts tomorrow. I mean, you're like, there's the season, and that makes that's a big deal. I don't know how they're going to get, half their fans to sign up on the same day, unless it's like, you only get WrestleMania if you sign up right now. It'll be weird to see, but I think it'll be good for the business.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe Money in the Bank would be a good pay-per-view for that, where it's not a pay-per-view. It's you have to get the WWE channel to see Money in the Bank, and you have 8 weeks to convince your cable company to put it on there, or you're screwed.
Yeah,
that's basically what happened on the NFL Network. Once it became apparent you couldn't watch the games unless you had this channel, then stuff started, moving. Although it took Time Warner forever to add it. But when I was in Boston, my dad last week or 2 weeks ago, my dad had like Xfinity cable, I think it's called, and they had like a WWE pay-per-view channel.
Oh, really?
But it was a subscription channel, and they had all these they had pay-per-views on it and old Monday Night Raws, and they had old Tuesday Night Titans episodes, but you had to subscribe to the channel. I didn't even know that existed. Did you?
Yeah, well, they used to have like a WWE Classics on Demand channel.
That's what it was.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know they were still cranking that out. Yeah, there was some cool stuff on there.
Yeah, it was interesting. So you feel like in general wrestling's in pretty good shape right now?
Yeah, I'm doing promotion for this book, and people keep asking me that. I mean, it's hard to know. It's hard to know if you can even make the audience that much bigger with so many other TV shows on. But, if you go back and look at wrestling history, and my book goes back to 1900, you do see this sort of cyclical pattern where every time there's a new technology platform, wrestling finds a way to sort of pop. And now that, they're renegotiating their TV deal, and if they do the WWE Network, then they're if they're doing proprietary stuff for WWE Network, then they can sell it to Netflix and Hulu as like second run, like the day after or whatever, and that could be a really huge thing. So I don't know. I think it's in good shape. Everybody seems to feel pretty good about Triple H having some kind of power, and maybe there'll be another Rock and Wrestling or another Attitude Era somewhere along the line that everybody will be asking me questions about.
The YouTube has been fun to catch up on wrestling. My son will go on the iPad and he'll find all of a sudden he's watching some Hell in the Cell match or whatever, and it's amazing how much stuff is on, how many matches are on the internet.
Isn't it crazy? I mean, it made doing the book so much easier because the online wrestling community is so vital, that everything's there. But yeah, I was talking to actually Daniel Bryan a couple of weeks ago, and he said, and he was saying how awesome it was that when he was a kid, he had to mail away for a VHS tape and pay $30 for it or whatever, and that's the only way he could see some classic Japanese match. And there was a lot of people who did that sort of thing, and now it's just all there on YouTube, and it's really cool.
I'm so jealous. You had such an easier time writing your book than I had doing my NBA book, because when I did that, YouTube was, I think, I wrote most of that in 07, 08, and the first part of 09. So YouTube, I think, had come out in 05, and it started to get going in 06, and by 07, people were putting stuff on there. So there was some stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But most of the stuff I had to get from the NBA. Fortunately, I had some friends who would mail me DVDs and stuff. I look at what's on YouTube now in 2013. I would have had such an easier time writing the book. I mean, literally every Larry Bird game's on YouTube now.
Yeah.
Or whoever. Anything from 1976 on is on YouTube. So I can only imagine with wrestling, any match you wanted to see was probably on there, I'm guessing, from 77 on.
The vast majority of it. No, the weird thing is those the TV, the territorial era TV shows in the 70s. Film was so expensive that they would just tape over everything over and over again.
Oh, no.
And so it's not until 80 that you really get a complete record. But for the most part, everything's there. And there's been a number of matches that I've actually seen reference to online where they say, this match doesn't exist as far as anyone knows. And then I'll just be like, oh yeah, and look it up on YouTube and it's there. It's
wow.
Crazy. Everything is there now.
One of the interesting things about what you've done online and then with this book is you're writing about wrestling in a really smart, kind of big picture, highbrow way. And that, before you, nobody was doing that. Why do you think people didn't write about wrestling in like a serious, smart way until you?
Well, I mean,
I guess Meltzer was the closest.
Who was the closest?
Like Dave Meltzer, like at least he was trying to write about it in a big picture way, but not how you're doing it, obviously.
Well, I love Dave's writing, but I think part of it's just really functional. Is like if it weren't for a site like Grantland, that's just a sports and pop culture site, then there's going to be people always asking, why is this here, right? Because it's not really sports and it's not really pop culture.
Yeah.
So, there are a lot of people that aren't going to cover it. ESPN, God love them, only covers wrestling when somebody dies. So, it's hard to find a place for it. And
who were your role models when you had in your head, I'm going to start, like initially you started writing for Deadspin, doing the Dead Wrestler of the Week. In your head, what made you think it was going to work?
I had no idea it was going to work. I kind of just kind of fell backwards into that. And, the first piece I wrote for them was like 500 words, if that. And then the second one was a little bit longer. And then by like the third or fourth one, it was like, 3,500 words.
Right.
And part of it was sort of like a gag at the beginning where I was like, I'm going to treat professional wrestling as if like it's a scholarly activity. And I was writing a little bit deliberately highbrow, like, just sort of silly, like, silly highbrow. And that just sort of morphed into the style that I am still using, hopefully not ironically. But where you just sort of treat it like, if you treat it like it's a good thing, like it's a respectable thing to write about, then, it just sort of follows from there. And it's really interesting because it's no secret that like some of the, most exciting stuff that happens in the wrestling world happens off camera or in the dressing room and in real life. Yeah. And when you kind of take the real world and the fake world and treat them together, it's actually a way more interesting way to engage, I think.
One of the offshoots of your column, you've been doing famous shoots on the for our sports blog, and this is something I've been fascinated by forever and ever. Shoots are basically when, for people who don't know, shoots happen when in the ring something goes wrong and somebody goes rogue. Basically, is what happens. And the great thing about shoots is they're always urban legends, and you never knew what to believe or not. But now with YouTube, a lot of them are on YouTube. Yeah. And now it's like, oh, so this happened. Oh, I bet it didn't happen. And then you watch it, it's like, oh, wow, that really did happen. Like, that was amazing. And, and a lot of them are on there. And you made that kind of a running series.
Yeah. No, there'll be another one soon. But it's crazy, too, because you can hear someone talking about, well, listen, in all of wrestling history, everybody, even in real life, everybody's working the character, right? I mean, like, so it's really hard to do to put the histories together because everybody's sort of lying, even when they're trying to tell you the truth. But I heard like about that, Bruiser Brody Lex Luger match that was famous so many times, and now it's on YouTube, right? So I can just go and I can just watch it 5 times in a row from standing up close in the screen and standing way back, and after a while you just you kind of know what happened, you understand it because you really can watch it in real time, and it's it's incredibly cool to have that resource now, and it's really fun to write about that stuff. I'm glad that you made me do that because it's kind of the coolest part of wrestling history.
How long did you spend on the book?
Oh man, it was probably a good year and a half of really hard work.
It's a worthy read. If you like wrestling, and if you even fell out of wrestling, but you still loved it once upon a time, I personally think it's worth the read. I'm not just saying that because you work for us. There's no book like it. What's your favorite chapter in the book?
Well, the one that is the most meaningful to me is probably the one about the Von Erich family. Because that's a serious tragedy. I grew up watching those guys on world-class wrestling, and that was what happened to that family is just heartbreaking. But I don't know, man. And then the other, at the very end of the book, I write about Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero, which is, I decided to put them in the same chapter because they were both stories were so tragic, and I didn't think I could make it through 2 separate chapters. So those are the ones that probably hit me the hardest. But there's a lot of stuff in the book that's just sort of upbeat and fun, and just the kind of sidebars about different wrestling history, and that's the stuff that I kind of love the most. I did stuff about all the royalty in wrestling and all the commercials that wrestlers have made, and there's a piece about race in wrestling that's going to run on Grantland. So it's that kind of stuff is the most fun stuff for me.
So top 3 30 for 30s we could have made about wrestling that we can never make because they guard all that stuff and they'll end up making their own documentaries, I'm sure. But number 1 for me would be Andre the Giant. I just think he would be the best one. Who would be your next 2 on the list?
All right.
Von Erichs is up there.
30 for 30, I would say there's got to be an angle about the rock and wrestling era when Mr. T and all those guys were like on MTV all the time. It was Hogan and Piper. Like there's got to be a good angle for that because that was such a moment.
The intersection of wrestling, pop culture, mainstream culture, MTV. MTV kind of at its apex of having kind of a weird cutting edge power on making and breaking people.
Yeah. That would be really good. And then the story that I was actually just talking to a buddy who makes documentaries last night about this, and we were saying we each got to quit our jobs for a year and maybe do it. But the greatest story in wrestling history, I don't know if I want to spoil it, is the plane crash that changed wrestling. That Ric Flair was in when he was young and broke his back before he was famous. And a bunch of guys died, and it was sort of the end of kayfabe in North Carolina for a little while. I mean, it was a crazy story.
Which guy did anybody die in that plane that?
Yeah, the pilot died, and a couple other guys ended up dying soon thereafter, and most of the guys never wrestled again.
Right.
But yeah, that's just a crazy story.
That sounds like that's at least a short.
Yeah.
It's at least like an awesome 15-minute short.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about it off the podcast.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Maybe we'll just delete this whole thing. Yeah. I think the Von Erichs would be a phenomenal 90-minute documentary.
Oh yeah,
it's
absolutely.
really like a cursed family. Like whether you believe in curses or not, it's hard not to sift through that family history and not think that there's some sort of curse. And
well, in the book, I actually talk about it. There's like an actual urban legend about a guy actually cursing Fritz. It's almost certainly not true, but it's sort of awesome. And you could do 90 minutes just of footage of the Von Erichs coming through the crowd in the sportatorium and going to the ring and like middle-aged women trying to grab their junk. There is so much cool stuff from that era, but that's just what I came up with.
That's probably my favorite all-time multi-person on each side feud. The Von Erichs versus the Freebirds. Yeah, I don't think it gets any better than that from an execution standpoint.
No, absolutely not. And it's so good. It was so good, and it felt so real. And
it felt real, and it was also no weak links whatsoever. You look on both sides, and it's like looking at the '84 finals in the NBA or something, where it's just everybody on both sides brings something to the table.
Oh yeah. No, I love all those guys so much. I wrote about Terry Gordy in the book too, and he was an incredible figure back then.
All right. Any predictions for the last few months of the WWE here?
I think we're going to see a lot of Big Show and a lot of Triple H. Hopefully we'll see some Daniel Bryan and CM Punk, and they won't just be kind of totally shunned off to the side. But aside from that, I have no idea.
My son has created a wrestling character called the Wild Animal that I don't think you'll be seeing on the WWE. But I can't decide if it's a good thing or a bad thing when your 6-year-old son creates his own wrestling character. I think that's a good thing. Shows imagination. I don't know. Maybe. Possibly.
Yeah, it's creativity. It's athleticism. That's definitely a good thing.
The athleticism's there. He's got a finishing move that's a combination of the X-Punk move and the Santino move. That's this. He does the go to sleep, does the flying Punk thing, but finishes with the Santino double fist hit. And it hurts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's going to break my nose at some point. So when you see me on an NBA countdown with 2 black eyes and a nose that's sideways, you'll know what happened.
Oh, God.
David Shoemaker, you can check out the Squared Circle. It's on Amazon. It's on anywhere you can buy a book online, correct?
Yeah, bnn.com, Amazon, real life bookstores if they still exist. The book's everywhere.
Are you doing any signings?
No signings yet, but we're all over the place on radio and stuff. So
oh, good. All right. And you can check out the Masked Man column on Grantland.com. We have another pay-per-view coming up at the end of this month. Survivor Series, right?
Yeah.
November 20s, I'm going to say 4th.
Yeah, something like that. It's finally
something
one
like
that you
that.
remember watching before in your life, so that'll be good.
Yeah, this is the one. If we have the 4 wrestling majors, this is the weak link for me. Money in the Bank, you could flip that with Survivor Series for me, and I think I'd be happy.
Yeah, even the Survivor Series match is just always sort of a letdown when they try to recapture that fun. It's never fun.
Not happening. All right, good luck with the book. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man.
40% off. Whoa.
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Podcenter at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.
Gotta say, Golick, great call on grabbing Subway for lunch and getting guacamole on our subs.
Told you this new guac really amps up the flavor.
Yep, something adding up things can be great. Guacamole on your sub, a new co-host to replace you.
What was that?
Oh, no, nothing.
Subway now has deliciously rich new guacamole made from ripe Hass avocados with just a hint of garlic, onion, and jalapeno. Discover how new guacamole turns up the flavor on any of your freshly made favorites. Subway, eat fresh.